Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Himanshu Arora from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. Today we are going to study a module titled Aging in Rural and Tribal Society from the paper Biosocial Gerontology. First of all, let's start with the learning objectives of the module. After going through this module, you will able to know the definitions and basic concepts of aging. You will able to understand the effects of aging on the individual, and you will able to know about the characteristics of rural and tribal societies. You will understand the different aspects of aging in the context of rural and tribal societies. You will learn about the effect of aging on the rural and tribal societies, and you'll also learn the concept of successful aging and measures for successful aging. You'll learn about measures for elderly in rural and tribal societies. Now, we'll introduce you to the definitions and basic concepts of aging. Aging is the process of growing older during which structural and functional changes accumulate in an organism as a result of the passage of time. The changes manifest as a decline from the organism's peak fertility and physiological functions until death. Growing old is a complex and gradual process having biological, psychological, and social dimensions which not only correspond with one another but also do not exactly coincide with one's chronological age. It is, however, true that the chronological age is an index of the growing and developmental process that goes on in the biological, psychological, and sociological dimensions. As life expectancy rises and birth rates decline in developed countries, the median age rises accordingly. According to the United Nations, this process is taking place in nearly every country in the world. A rising median age can have significant social and economic implications as the workforce gets progressively older and the number of older workers and the retirees grows relative to the number of young workers. The older people generally incur more health related costs than younger people in the workplace and can also cost more in workers' compensation and pension liabilities. In most developing countries, an older workforce is somewhat inevitable, and the same trend is being observed in developing countries, including India. Aging can be sociologically defined as the combination of biological, psychological, and social processes that affects people as they grow old. The study of aging and the elderly in the population is called gerontology. It is derived from the Greek word geron, meaning old person. Gerontologists work in many disciplines including medicine, psychology, sociology. It not only investigates how people change as they grow old, but also the different ways in which societies around the world define old age. Growing old brings with it distinctive experiences and also significant disadvantages, including lower income and sometimes the experience of prejudice and discrimination, both in and beyond the workplace. For this reason, like class, gender, and race, growing old is a dimension of social stratification. Society organizes our lives in patterned ways that correspond to being a child, an adolescent, an adult, and an older person. Now, we'll talk over the effects of aging on individual. Aging affects all human beings. However, the degree of impact may vary individually. It depends on several factors, including the biological and genetic factors and a healthy lifestyle. With aging, a person suffers on many counts and witnesses deterioration in physical as well as mental health. The effects of aging on an individual may vary. However, following are the main effects of aging which can be seen on individuals. These are the most negative effect of aging on an individual is the decline of cognitive ability after a certain age. This also varies from person to person, but it takes place usually after 60 years of age. One of the most frequent problems with old age is dementia, that is, decline in mental ability severe enough to interfere with daily life, such as loss of memory. It usually occurs at later stage of life. The effect of dementia may be blind cognitive impairment to severe neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's disease, etc. At a later stage, especially after 50s, wrinkles develop mainly due to photoaging, particularly affecting the sun exposed areas like face and hands. Another age related disease is atherosclerosis, which leads to several cardiovascular problems such as stroke, heart attack, etc. Other age related problems include the gradual weakening and decay of bones, especially after 60 years of age, weakening of eyesight due to lens hardening, problem of cataract, hearing loss, frailty, hair fall, and turning grey, etc. Women also see many changes such as decline in fertility, menopause, which occurs between 49 to 50 years of age, and related physiological changes which also affect their health adversely. The impulses and reflexes, which are spontaneous action to any events, also go down gradually with age. Chances of developing blood pressure and diabetes are also high in later stage of life. The factors proposed to influence aging can be categorized into two main groups, that is, programmed and damage related. Programmed factors follow a biological timetable, perhaps one that might be a continuation of the one that regulates childhood growth and development. This regulation would depend on changes in gene expression that affect the systems responsible for maintenance, repair, and defense responses. Damage related factors include internal and environmental assaults to living organisms that induce cumulative damage at various levels. Now, we will discuss the characteristics of rural society. Rural society is characterized by villages. Village is a self-sufficient community which satisfies all the needs of its people. Villagers have a sense of unity and a feeling of amiability towards each other. The development of villages is influenced considerably by the life of the village. Faith in religion and universal power is found in the life of the villages. The major occupation of the village is agriculture, which involves dependence on nature. Family has a strict controlling authority over the members. All the members of the family share the burden of the family occupation. In this way of working together, the villagers maintain sense of cooperation among themselves. They respect the judgment and obey the orders of their elders and the panchayats. Some of the main characteristic features of rural society are size of the community. The village communities are smaller in area than the urban communities. As the village communities are small, the population is also low. Density of population. Rural society is also characterized by low density of population, that is, number of persons residing in 1 kilometer square. Due to this, the people have intimate relationships and face to face contacts with each other. Occupation. Agriculture is the main occupation of the rural people and forms the basis of rural economy. Most of the rural people are engaged in agriculture as farmers or agricultural laborers. Close contact with nature. The rural people are in close contact with nature as most of their daily activities revolve around the natural surroundings such as land, water, and plant. This is the reason why rural people are more influenced by nature. They consider land as their mother as they depend on it for the basic needs such as food, clothing, and shelter. Homogeneity of the population. The rural communities are homogeneous in nature. Most of their inhabitants are connected with agriculture and its allied activities, though there are people belonging to different castes, religions, and classes. Social stratification. Rural society is divided and stratified into different castes, unlike the urban society, which is stratified into classes. The rural society is divided into various strata on the basis of caste. Social interaction. The social interaction and exchange are very high in rural areas, and interaction level possesses more stability and continuity. The relationships and interactions in the primary groups are intimate. The family fulfills the need of the members and exercises control over them. It is the family which introduces the members to the customs, traditions, and culture of the society. Social mobility. In rural areas, mobility is rigid as all the occupations are based on caste. Shifting from one occupation to another is difficult as caste is determined by birth. Thus, caste hierarchy determines the social status of the rural people. Social cohesion and solidarity. The degree of social solidarity and cohesion among the community members is greater in villages as compared to urban areas. Common experience, purposes, customs, and traditions form the basis of unity in the villages. Joint family. Another characteristic feature of the rural society is the joint family system. The family controls the behavior of the individuals. Generally, the father is the head of the family and is also responsible for maintaining the discipline among members. Now, we'll talk about functions of rural society. Rural society, like any other society, also has some important functions. These are the production of food and other raw material, which is a basic function of rural society on which the survival of modern urban society also depends. Rural society has also functioned as a supplier of people to the city. The relative importance of this rural to urban migration is probably greatest in societies that are undergoing modernization. A distinctive function of rural society is its custodianship of natural resources as they are considered as close to the nature. Modern rural societies increasingly serve as a residential function for persons with urban centered sources of livelihood. Also, in terms of societal crisis, there has been a tendency for rural society to perform a security function as represented by urban to rural or postponed rural to urban migration. In addition, economic functions ancillary to or independent of the primary activities are characteristically found in rural areas in some form and in some degree, but are not considered as distinctive function of rural society. Now, we will describe the characteristics of tribal society. Tribes are relatively isolated from larger cultural influences, have a relative cultural homogeneity and a simple technology. They believe in spirits, magic, and witchcraft. They have their own taboos which prohibit certain actions that are punishable by the community, by the supernatural, or by the magical consequences. Large number of the tribes believe in animism, according to which all the objects, both animate and inanimate, are permanently or temporarily inhabited by spirits or souls. Some of the distinguishing features of tribe and the tribal societies are common name. Each tribe and tribal society has a distinct name of its own through which it is distinguished from other similar tribal groups. Definite common topography. Tribes generally occupy common geographical areas and it is commonplace for all the members of a particular tribe occupying that region. In the absence of a common but definite living place, the tribal will lose other characteristic of a tribal life like common language, way of living, and a community sentiment. Sense of unity and cohesiveness. Due to living in a close group, sharing the common area, dialect, and rituals and beliefs, the people living in the tribal society possesses a sense of cohesiveness and unity within the community. They share sorrow and happiness with each other. Endogamous group. Tribal people generally do not marry outside their tribe, as marriage within the same tribal community is highly appreciated and much applauded. However, inter-tribe marriages are also observed due to changing norms and exposure to outside world. Common dialect. Each tribal group has a specific language in which the members of the tribal community exchange their views. Each tribe has at least its own dialect, if not script. This also strengthens sense of unity and cohesiveness among the community members. Ties of blood relationship. In the tribal society, blood relation is the greatest bond and most powerful force inculcating sense of unity among the tribals. Protection awareness. Tribal people always need protection from intrusion and infiltration, and for this, a single political authority is established and all the powers are vested in that. The safety of the tribal is left to the skill and mental power of the person enjoying political authority. The tribal chief is aided by a tribal committee in the events of contingencies. Tribe is divided into a number of small groups and each group is called as clan, is headed by its own leader. The chief of a group works according to directives received by him from the tribal chief. Distinct political organization. Every tribe has its own distinct political organization which looks after the interests of tribal people. All tribes have their own political organization. They have councils of elders which control members. The whole political authority lies in the hand of a tribal chief. In some tribes, tribal committees exist. For example, in case of Tharus of Bihar, it is Tharu Kalyan Mahasangh to help the tribal chief in discharging his functions in the interest of the tribe. Subsistence economy. Most of the tribal population are actively engaged in agricultural and allied activities. Most of them live in isolated terrains. The main sources of their livelihood are agriculture and gathering of forest produce. They do not produce for profit but for subsistence. They still rely on barter system and spend a greater part of their earnings on social and religious ceremonies. Common culture. Each tribe has prescribed patterns of behavior and festivals and deities to worship. Common culture of a tribe springs out from the sense of unity, common language, common religion, and common political organization. Common culture produces a life of homogeneity among the tribal community. Importance of kinship. Kinship ties among the tribal is very strong and is also forms the basis of tribal social organization. Most tribes are divided into exogamous clans and lineages. The marriage among tribal is based on the rule of tribal endogamy. Marriage is viewed as a contract and there are no prohibition on divorce and remarriage. Egalitarian values. The tribal social organization is based on the egalitarian principle. Thus, there are no institutionalized inequalities based on caste, class, or gender. Rudimentary type of religion. Tribes believe in certain myths and have a rudimentary type of religion. They believe in totems signifying objects having mystic relationship with member of the tribe. Often, an activity is believed to be caused by these spirits. Some spirits are worshipped and treated with fear and respect. Some scholars have maintained that animism was the earliest form of religion of the tribes. Many tribes believe in ancestor worship too. Distinct psychological bent for enjoying life. Tribals are very simple and polite and possesses a great amount of feeling for his kinsmen in particular and community members in general. His close association with nature inspires him to lead a carefree life. They feel pleasure in roaming about hills, forests, and fields. Nature makes him intimate with the environment. Now, aging in rural and tribal societies. Different society and culture express age in different ways, and response to the aging also varies accordingly. The age of an adult human is commonly measured in whole years since the day of birth. Aging can be seen in different perspectives such as maturity, aging as decline, aging as a life cycle event, aging as generation, and aging as survival. Retirement from the active life is a common transition faced by the elderly and may have both positive and negative consequences. Aging marks a form of transition from one set of social roles to another, and such roles are difficult. Among all role transformation in the course of aging, the shift into the new role of elderly is one of the most complex and complicated. In rural and tribal societies, the children used to adopt the same traditional occupation of the family. The aged father used to have greater role in all the social and economic decisions. The expertise and knowledge of each generation were passed on to the next, thus affording older persons as a useful role in the family and society. However, this is not valid today, especially for the rural societies, as the rural society has also been witnessing vast changes over the period. Now, the children are not interested in family occupation, are getting and are inculcating the values and norms of the urban and modern society, are also getting jobs outside of respective village. In this situation, the aged parents are left behind alone in the care of the relatives and neighbors in the village. Even the uneducated and unskilled young generation of the villages are migrating out to the nearby cities for the unskilled work in the factory or in informal sectors such as construction work of building, road, bridges, etc. This often results in feeling of loss of status, worthlessness, and loneliness, and enhances the process of aging. If the older person is economically dependent on the children, the problem is likely to become even worse. In case of tribal society, the social cohesion and solidarity among community members is still very high. Tribal society in India is also witnessing changes, but this rate of change is very slow. The traditional and cultural values are still intact. The traditional institutions such as family, marriage, and kinship still hold strong in the lives of the tribal. The out-migration among the tribal communities is also seen, but most of them are still engaged in their traditional occupation. The sense of community belongingness is very high even as they have to migrate out for work. Disintegration from joint to nuclear families also observed among tribal communities, but this is only for the practical purpose. This leads to change in the economic structure and income of the family. Still, decision making is at the family level. The head of the family or the eldest member of the family is consulted, and at the community level, the chief of the tribal council is consulted. The socio-cultural family values are still intact. The aged person still gets the love, affection, and care from their family and community members in the tribal society. If there is any stressed migration for the work, somebody in the family is there to look after the elderly in the family. If nobody is left behind in the family, however, this is very unusual. In that case, the community members takes care of them. Successful aging. Aging is a natural and irreversible process. Aging is inevitable, but the side effects of aging can be minimized and to some extent it can be delayed. Positive life with a positive attitude and self perception of health has been correlated with higher well being and reduced morbidity and mortality in the elderly population. Lifestyle. Improvement in lifestyle leads to healthy life and successful aging. Caloric restriction substantially affects lifespan in many animals, including the ability to delay or prevent many age related diseases. No lifespan data exists for humans on a calorie restricted diet, but several reports support protection from age related diseases. Sleep. The amount of sleep has an impact on mortality. People who live the longest report sleeping for 6 to 7 hours each night. Lack of sleep, that is less than 5 hours, more than doubles the risk of death from cardiovascular diseases. But too much sleep, which is more than 9 hours, is also associated with a doubling of the risk of death, though not primarily from cardiovascular disease. Sleeping more than 7 to 8 hours per day has been consistently associated with increased mortality, though the cause is probably other factors such as depression and health related problems. Physical exercise. Regular exercise has positive effects on life, not only on body but also on mind. It may increase life expectancy. People who participate in moderate to high levels of physical exercise have a lower mortality rate compared to individuals who are not physically active. Stress, avoidance of persistence and chronic stress is associated with a slower loss of telomeres in most but not all studies and with decreased cortisol levels. A chronically high cortisol level compromises the immune system, causes cardiac damage, and is associated with facial aging, and the latter in turn is a marker for increased morbidity and mortality. Stress can be countered by social and spiritual engagement, social networking, spirituality, and married life, all of which are associated with longevity. Social engagement. This may prove very effective in engaging the elderly and maintaining their mental as well as physical health. However, the opportunities for social engagement have reduced considerably. Measures taken for elderly in rural and tribal societies. A new concept of age friendly communities has emerged recently in this context. This term was first used by World Health Organization. This is defined as encouraging an active aging by optimizing opportunities for health, participation, and security in order to enhance quality of life as people age. It has identified key areas for action in respect of service provision, the built environment, that is housing, outdoor spaces and buildings, and social aspects, that is civic and social participation. Keeping this alarming situation of population aging in mind, various measures have been taken by different agencies such as central and state government, non-government organizations, civil society, etc. These are policy and guidelines. The Government of India has come up with certain policy and guidelines for the care of the elderly, such as National Policy for Older Persons, Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Act 2007, etc. These policies and act provide legal sanctions to the rights of the elderly. In addition, constitutional provisions for old age security, old age pension, establishing old age homes, are expanding geriatric services, liberalizing housing policy for old age persons. Social security benefit. Beside other social security schemes and programs in the form of health care, PDS, concession to senior citizens, etc., the government has also started a pension scheme, National Old Age Pension Scheme. However, the amount of pension provisioned is not sufficient at all. Second problem is of implementation, as all intended beneficiaries did not get the pension, and also the full amount is seldom paid to them. Old age homes. As the problem of population aging surfaced in the country, the concept of old age home has also emerged. However, this is not very old, as the first old age home was established in Bangalore in 1983. According to HelpAge India estimates, there are 728 institutions at present, perhaps a majority of them in urban areas. Kerala has the largest number of old age homes. More than 60% of the old age homes in India are of the charitable type, meant for destitute or very poor persons. NGOs work. Some non-government organizations such as HelpAge India are also working on the issue extensively. These NGOs are not only providing care to the elderly but also conduct extensive studies and attract the attention of the government agencies for the welfare of the aged persons in the society. These NGOs also run old age homes, mobilized funds from the government and philanthropists to run their programs. Increasing institutionalization of elderly people may also erode the traditional family values. There is also need for various types of institutions to accommodate the increasing number of elderly parents whose children are unable or unwilling to care for their parents. Different studies have suggested a number of important measures for the care of elderly in India. Some of the important measures suggested so far are: efforts should be made to strengthen the traditional institutions, that is, family. Elderly persons also prefer to stay in their own homes with their kith and kins. The children should also be sensitized towards the traditional value of giving respect to the elderly, looking after them, and importance of fulfilling the filial obligations. There is a need for effective legislation for parents' right to be cared for by the children. The existing healthcare systems, which are not sufficient to meet the physical and health needs of the aging population, need to be revamped. The existing institutions providing care to the elderly other than family should also be monitored regularly. It is necessary to increase public awareness of the need for protection of this subgroup, especially the target group. There is also need for the elderly to remain active, to know that they still have a part to play in the family or community to which they belong. Now we will summarize what we have studied till now. Aging of population is the byproduct of demographic transition. The decline in fertility ensures the increasing share of future elderly, and the prolongation of life expectancy ensures and rapid increase in the elderly population. This scenario is same in all the populations, but both rural and tribal societies are witnessing vast amount of changes due to these factors, but the family values, cohesion and solidarity, brethren's relationships among the community members are still more than the urban societies. The community members have one-to-one contact with each other, and they share more common space, and they share and celebrate the happiness together. The social exchange among the community members is also very high. This is especially valid for the tribal societies. The elderly population is facing more problems in the rural society than the tribal society, as despite all the changes, the tribal society still nurtures the value of community living, social cohesion, solidarity among the community members, etc. This also takes care of the needs of elderly in tribal society. Since a large majority of older people are living in rural areas, discussion of aging in India is essentially a discussion of aging in rural areas. Almost 8 out of 10 older people in India live in rural areas. Among the aged, women comprises a slightly higher proportion than men. Pervasive poverty and inequalities of income coupled with a very inadequate safety net has meant that majority of the older persons have become marginalized or even destitute. The poor among elderly people have been losing out even as economic development is taking place in the country as a whole. Our government has made several initiatives for the ever growing elderly population, but their need in personal care, emotional security, appropriate health facilities, for which several suggestions have been made. Thank you.